Welcome to Talking in Common, a podcast of all things lifestyle, family, relationships, well-being, kids and culture. This is not a how-to, but an insight into the lives of ourselves and others and how we all manage to get by. Hosted by myself, Kate Gadinsky, and my co-host, Sophie Panton. Take a listen and let's find out what we all have in common. So how many hours by this point do you reckon you'd been in labour for? You were in a really long pre-labour, it seems like. And then
Yeah, I never know how to say how long the labour is because I don't know if you count the pre-labour or
But you'd sort of been having contractions on and off for like nearly 24 hours by this point.
Yeah. Very mild and manageable and like now in hindsight I'm really glad it was like that because I had all this time to get prepared and all that sort of thing. But yeah, your body's still going through a lot physically. So I was, exhausted and very ready to give birth to it by this stage. But, I should give a bit of context to the experience too. Like I was in the public system, so giving birth in a public hospital this time. Yeah. Just had a midwife, but at the same hospital where I had Ren with the same midwife, which was so nice. That familiarity and continuity of care is so important, I feel like, with birth, just to make you feel safe and secure and confident.
Yeah.
But what I didn't know that my midwife was actually off for, I think she said 4 days or something. So when I had called a few times, they had said, oh, Jess isn't in, but she is in tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. So they were saying this during the night that I was labouring. She'll be in tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. And later that day, like after I had the baby, or during the labour or something, Aiden was like, I feel like you're kind of subconsciously waiting for Jess, the midwife, to be there. And I was like, I feel like I am too. Like,
you're holding off.
Yeah, kind of like holding off, which I wasn't intentionally doing that, but I was like, I really hope she's there for it. And I had such a great experience with her last time, and I did really hope that she was there. So yeah, again, like on reflection, it was so lucky that I didn't have the baby that night because I got to have the baby with my midwife the next day when she was there back on duty.
All aligned for you.
Yeah, so it was all like.
So you got to the hospital, and how long after you got to the hospital did you give birth to Fala?
It was like an hour.
Oh, so good.
Yeah. So thank God I arrived there. You've got to kind of check in with the triage nurse. So you're kind of like in a waiting room with all these other randoms, at the triage, which is kind of a bit of a bizarre experience when you're in pretty heavy like labour. Like the nurse has to ask you directly, like, can you tell me your name and your address? And, Aiden's like, oh, can I answer this for her? I'm like mid-contraction, like holding onto the desk and like crying, not crying because I'm upset or sad or anything, but just
because you're in pain.
Because you're in pain. Or it's just intense and it's emotional and sometimes crying is just like a response to whatever, the experience. And she's like, I'm sorry to be doing this to you. And she was like, and Sophie is your date of birth this? And I'm like, oh, yeah. And, I
was going to say, did you have that moment of, because I do remember this so distinctly in all three of my births, but did you have that moment of all of a sudden, I just can't do this, like I can't do it anymore?
Oh, yeah.
It's too much. I just can't do it. I can't do it. I don't know how this baby's going to come because I can't do it.
Yeah, I feel like you start to get that when you get the bearing down, like when you're about to push or when you've been pushing for quite some time but it's about to come out. That's kind of when you get to that point.
I always got it just before I was about to start pushing.
Yeah, which I think I probably had it around the same time.
Yeah.
But I walked through like the triage area, or they took me through, and they take you through into this waiting room just while they wait for your midwife to come down and collect you, basically. And I walked through the doors into this like sort of private waiting room. And as I walked in there, I like burst into tears, and I was just like, oh, like kind of moaning and bursting into tears and having a contraction at the same time. And I was just like saying, I'm sorry to the nurse. And she was like, it's all right, calm down. I was like, I don't know what's going on. And then out of nowhere, my waters just flooded. And I haven't had that experience before, like with my waters breaking.
Yeah.
And I was like, whoa, I think my water's just broke. And she was like, that's all right. That's why you're feeling overwhelmed. It's all good. Like, she was so lovely. The midwives are all so supportive and so lovely. And like, I'm not sure that everyone gets this experience, but I had her at the Royal Women's, and I've had great experiences there, and all the midwives are just really like, I don't know, beautiful, nurturing female support that you need in those moments. And she was so lovely, and she was like, oh, I'll get you a pad and I'll get you a towel and it's all good. And Jess is on her way, your midwife's on her way down, and she's got your room ready for you. She's got the bath run for you. Everything's all good, Sophie, and you're doing so well. And I was just like, oh, you're so lovely. You're so amazing. Thank you. And my waters haven't broken before. This is really full on. And I was just like bawling my eyes out.
It's just so intense, isn't it?
So intense. So then from that room, you got to like waddle your way up to the birthing suite. And because my waters were breaking, I had like this towel between my legs.
And it kind of keeps trickling for ages.
Oh, I said, Aiden like tucked my pants into my socks for me so it wouldn't like leak out the bottom of it.
Oh, your calves were wet.
Yeah, I'm like, oh my God, this is just crazy. But, you're in a women's hospital, so it's like,
yeah, it's okay.
That's what everyone's kind of there for in a way.
Yeah.
Seen it all before. But, stop on the way, have another intense contraction. I had a big hoodie on and just had that over my head, and got into the birthing suite, and my amazing, lovely midwife was in there, and she had a student midwife with her who was also super lovely, and, they check with you if you're okay with all of that. But she was really supportive and really helpful, and another really nice energy to have around. And so I was only in that room, for like an hour or less from then until when I had her.
Yeah.
And once I got in there, it was just really quiet. We just had some nice quiet music on, and I just like started riding through the contractions, which were very intense by this stage. I maybe had 2 contractions and then got like the bearing down feeling, and I feel like this honestly was my best birth yet. And it's kind of a shame in a way, like, the hindsight is amazing because, or, the previous experience is amazing because this is the first time in birth that I've really felt like I have been able to work with the pain and work with the contractions and fully understand that the more you lean into the pain, even though it's such an intense pain, the more you lean into it, the more you move with it and like just allow it to be your friend, the more easily you birth.
Yeah.
And I thought I had 2 great birth experiences last time, and I thought that I was doing that. But what I now know, having this experience, is that in the last 2 births, I actually was still resisting the pain, even though in my mind I was like, surrender, go with the pain. This time I really moved with it and worked into it and really had that experience of like working with my body and what it was naturally doing. And although excruciatingly painful and, pushes you to your absolute limits of what you think you're capable of, I was able to just really feel like I was going with it and working with it and
trusting your body as well. Like
fully trusting it. Yeah. Yeah. And so I wanted to have the baby in water because I had ran like that and it was a really good experience. However, I was hesitant because I was in the bath for like 2 hours with Ren pushing or, going through those kind of bearing down contractions, and it was quite full on. Like I felt really, really like exhausted by it after Ren. So I was like apprehensive of being in the bath because once I got in, I was like, I'm not getting out, I'm not getting out until I have the baby. And because I had those moments where when I had relaxed too much during this labour, it had put things on hold. So I was like, I don't want to get in the bath and relax too much because I cannot have this being put on hold at this stage. So I like moved through the contractions and for a few contractions and then felt like I was very close to it coming out. I was like, all right, I'm ready to hop in the bath now. Let's do it. And so the midwife and Aiden like helped me get into the bath and I just like slid in there and just like let my body just sort of fall in there and almost just lay down flat kind of on my side or on my back, just fully immersed under the warm water. And I was like, oh my God, it's so nice in here. It feels amazing in here. And then this big contraction came on and I was just like, oh, whoa, whoa, whoa. And just fully rode that one out. And that was the contraction that she was born in.
Oh, amazing. So good.
I was in the bath for like 5 minutes.
And you're like, oh.
Like,
oh my God. And because you probably, as you said, you probably hopped in thinking, okay, like I could be in here for a little while. I'm just going to get in. Oh, this is a nice feeling. Oh my God.
Yeah. Yeah. And I remember in my head being like, feeling like I was like, oh my God, like really loud and like, whoa, because that's what I was feeling in my body. Like, whoa, something different's happening. Like, I think it's coming out. And I felt her head come out. And then I wanted to say like, it's still coming. Like I wanted to kind of say like, it's still coming. Because it was the same midwife that I had last time. She was sort of expecting it to be a little bit similar. Like I had still had a bit of time to go once I got in the bath, and she was like, I literally turned around to get something. She was like, I could hear in your moaning, it was like a bit more high pitched, and I knew that it was you were either very close or it was coming out. She was like, and I turned around and the head was out. And then before I could even say like it's still coming or it's coming, she just came out. And
amazing.
One contraction, and all I could do was just say thank you. I was just saying to the baby like, thank you, oh my God, thank you, thank you, thank you. I was so relieved because I fully thought that I had like 2 hours of this ahead of me, and I just was so nervous about it. So I was just like, oh my God, thank you for coming out. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Oh, I was so relieved.
You did it. You did it.
Oh my God. Oh my God. And then she was there, yeah. Then she was there. And we didn't know it was a girl. It was a little surprise. She totally surprised us. I think we thought she was going to be a boy, like deep down. I was like, oh my God, it's a little girl. And she came out so quiet. I lifted her up and she was just silent, and she just like opened her eyes and she was just like looking around the room, like her little head, even turning her little head, looking around the room. And we were like, oh my God, look at her. Like her eyes were so open. I'm like, wow, look at her, look at her. And then she let out a little cry, but not much, and then just went silent again and just kept looking. And the midwife was like, oh, when they're born into water, it can be a really calm transition for them. So they don't let out that really screeching cry. And we were just like, oh my God, like I was being like, I was crying and like, oh my God. But she was just like, it was so amazing. It was so beautiful.
It's the most special, special, special moment, isn't it? It's just undescribable.
It's just the best. But I just felt so relieved that she didn't put me through that, long, sort of arduous, like, experience of just, But it was about that point that I was about to get in the bath that I was like, I don't want to do it. I can't,
It's too much.
It's too much. Like, I don't want to do it. I'm sure I said that to Aiden a few times. I remember feeling like my eyes rolling back in my head a little bit. Like you're so sort of out of your body. You're very much like unaware of like your physical surroundings. And I remember like opening my eyes a couple of times and just, the midwife's just like smiling at me and like, well done, Soph, you're doing great, all this sort of stuff. And I'm just like, oh my God, where am I?
I know, it's like you're in another world, right?
Yeah. It's actually so freaking cool.
Yeah.
It's so cool. But only on reflection.
In
the moment, it's wild.
I think too, like, it's obviously you had a really beautiful experience, and you can see how then we go, oh my God, like I would do that all over again. The pregnancy, the labor, like you forget about that intensity, like just how much of a literally wild ride it is.
Yeah.
Once you've got that baby in your arms, like all of that's like whatever, do that 1,000 times over.
Yeah. Well, I did feel like that pretty quickly this time around, but I didn't after Ren.
No.
Like I don't know. Well, his birth, even though a good experience and how I wanted and all that sort of thing, it just really like knocked me around. Took that. I lost quite a lot of blood. I think that played a major role in it because I was really depleted afterwards.
You got sick quite a bit too after he was born, didn't you?
And we got the early weeks with him were really hard. I had gas. Like I've talked about this. I've told this story, I'm sure, a million times. two people, but also on the podcast, I had gastro after, like the day after I had him. And that was just another form of like extreme depletion. And so I was just like, when I think back now, like I'm 4 weeks in with her, and when I think back to when we recorded the birth story with Ren after 4 weeks, I was like a shadow of myself.
Yeah.
You know, I was like, yeah, I'm fine, everything's going okay. Like this is all just part of it, which in a way it is, but if I compare to how I feel now compared to then, I'm like a million times better. I was really struggling that time around.
Yeah.
And just going through the days, going through the motions. But I was so pale. Like there's photos of me with the baby and I was so pale, so depleted, so sore, like really sore.
Yeah, your
the birth.
recovery. So how have you found, so let's talk a little bit about your recovery post-birth, like this time. How have you found, or how did you find, you know, in those first couple of weeks, just your physical recovery?
Well, I think because like the birth was so successful, the recovery has also been really successful. Like I said, it's been my best birth yet, and I think it's been my best recovery yet. So I had really low expectations because of my fear of getting sick afterwards, and you know, just the birth recovery in general is a lot, but then to get sick on top of that, it's pretty full on. So I've had really low expectations. So with low expectations, the experience has been amazing. Because I'm like,
Woo!
it's way better than I expected.
How good is this?
Yeah.
Oh, well, you finished your childbearing years on a very positive note, my darling.
Yeah, but you know, it's like a curse because now I'm like, I want another one.
You said that to me when I came to see you like 2 days after she was born. You were like, we were talking the other night and, maybe we could have another one or something like that.
God, it's an illness.
I know, isn't it?
It's a sickness.
I hear you. It is. So just like, you know.
Oh, and just the experience, like it's the most incredible privilege to experience this in life. Like it's
the pregnancy and the birth and everything.
And just having a baby. It's just like the most natural human experience and a very powerful experience. Like, you know, a lot of people say, why would you want to have a baby without pain relief, or why would you even do that these days? Like why? I'm like, well, it's one of the most incredible, powerful human experiences that we can allow ourselves. And if you can do it, why wouldn't you want to? Like, you know, each to their own. And I respect everyone's different choices and fears and abilities and all of that sort of thing. But I was able and willing, and the experience is unmatched with anything else. So I'm like,
it's the best high I've ever experienced in my life.
Yeah, right. Seriously. It's unbelievable. And you know, equally as testing and challenging.
Oh, yeah.
But, you know, if you want
also
to feel
the hardest
alive,
thing as well, you know,
that's
the
what
best
I mean.
and the
like,
hardest.
Yeah. The whole thing.
So are you at that, so you're 4 weeks in, so have you hit that wall yet where you're like, I'm just deliriously tired, or are you still kind of those hormones still?
I've got some pretty intense like fatigue headaches, and, you know, like from the feeding, you're sitting in awkward positions. Like there's many nights where I like pass out with my neck crooked feeding her and wake up 2 hours later like, so sore. But also as a newborn, like she's been such a good sleeper. Certainly didn't get that with my other 2 babies as well. They were like feeding 2 to 3 hours round the clock for weeks and weeks, which felt like eternity. Whereas from day one, she's slept like 6-hour blocks a lot of nights, if not 6 hours, at least 4 hours.
Yeah.
She seems to like, by 9 o'clock at night, she falls into like a deep sleep, like she's ready to sleep for the night, very different to the way that she naps during the day, which I'm like, my other 2 just didn't do this. They were just like the same, like the kind of the naps and the feeding round the clock.
Same. Let's not jinx it, but I feel like this is your turn to have a baby that sleeps well.
Yeah, that's all I wished for in my pregnancy. I was like, please just get a baby that sleeps, because otherwise I won't cope with the other 2. Like I won't cope. And thank God that she does, because it's the only thing getting me through. Because of course the other 2 wake up during the night too sometimes. So we've had to do a lot of like, you know, between myself and my partner, how are we going to figure that out, and how are we going to help you get me get the maximum amount of sleep between the baby feeds. And all of that sort of thing. So yeah, it's definitely an interesting experience having two other little kids at home and having a newborn. Like when you have your first child and your first pregnancy, I don't know about you or anyone else, but I literally was like, how do people with more kids do this? First of all, how do you like go through a pregnancy with like a toddler or another child? But then also just like how do you look after a newborn and recover from birth and, you know, go through all the hormonal ups and downs and go through all of it, but then still parent other young kids, give so much of yourself to the rest of your family.
Yeah.
Like how do you do it?
And particularly at that time too, because you get that, you want to give that to them at that when you've got a newborn, because you're so aware and conscious that you've just brought a new baby home, you know, like you're like, oh, I don't want them to think I'm just focusing on the baby. So it's like it's become such a priority. And then obviously a lot of the time you are needing to give all the attention to the baby. So it's like really conflicting. Like it can be really tricky.
So tricky. Like we'll start talking about at the start of the episode, like navigating my 4-year-old's emotions have been like probably one of the most challenging parts for us in the last month, which was totally unexpected. You know, like I think like you said to the other one, said to me the other day, like the most capable one has suddenly become the most incapable, and that's like so challenging.
And they're quite, I found 4 is like quite a defiant age too. I mean, everyone's kids are different and personalities, but so not only is it such a big change with the baby, but also a reflection of where she's at developmentally as well, like the age that she's at.
Yeah, yeah. And I can see that now. Like, you know, I always love your insight with your girls being a few years older than mine, because you're able to like shed some light on exactly that, like their developmental stage and things like that. But 4 is an interesting stage because I think it was you saying that they're also practicing a lot of like what they can control. Like so certain behaviors are like them pushing the boundaries about like, oh, well, if I don't eat my breakfast, that's actually something that I can control. And they're kind of learning that themselves in that age.
Yeah.
Which kind of makes sense because up until 4, you know, you're still somewhat doing everything for them or helping them with everything, and they don't have much control. You're telling them and helping them and doing everything for them. Whereas now suddenly she's like, oh, I can actually just say, no, I'm not going to do that. And that's,
I don't want to do that. I want this. And you know, there's that fine line of, of course, you want them to be able to have control with some things and, you know, make their own decisions, but also like they're still learning and they're young and you're teaching them and they're growing. And so it's kind of like finding that balance or rhythm, as we've called it before.
But tricky. The thing with like, you know, that I will say, if anyone's listening that is having their second or third or fourth child or something that doesn't know how it's going to work, I think like you actually don't necessarily get more time or get better at it or you do get better at it because you just get more used to it, but like
not more time.
Not more time. Everything just actually kind of compounds on top of it and you just manage to do it.
Yeah.
Like you sort of think like, oh, once, you know, how on earth, when I was pregnant with my third pregnancy, I literally was like visualizing, how does this scenario play out with a newborn? How does this scenario play out when I'm trying to feed the baby? How does this, you know, when it's already so chaotic and so busy?
It just happens, doesn't it?
And then it just happens, and it doesn't actually mean that you have more space or time for it. You're just doing it on top of the other things.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's full on. Like our night times are really quite crazy at the moment. And if they're all screaming at the same time, it's like very heightened senses for all of us involved. And there's a lot of practicing, talking, communicating between me and Aiden to just get
so important that you two try and be on the same page, like, because you can see whenever that slips in our house, if we're ever like, you know, not feeling as connected or like we've had a disagreement or something, like
or you're just stressed or fed up.
It just makes everything so much more difficult, whereas at least when you're like feeling like you're actually communicating and you're on the same page and you're in it together, like it just makes it a lot more manageable, you know.
Manageable, yeah. I mean, the first person to cop it when you're feeling stressed or frustrated or is your partner.
Yeah.
So yeah, and everyone does that. Like we've had, amongst a lot of the good, healthy communication, we've also had a lot of arguments, a lot of tears, a lot of, like there's lots of up and downs, but all of it is part of it, and all of it is communicating.
Absolutely.
And we're just trying to do our best, we're just trying to get through it. And I always say to Aiden, like, as long as we're supporting each other through it and not turning on each other, because the last thing that we need to do when we feel like the kids are turning on us and we're not coping is then turn on each other, because all you and I need as individuals is someone to support us.
So true.
So
and 3 is a lot of kids. I know you're one of 6, but like 3 is a lot of kids.
3 is a lot.
I actually looked the other day and I said to Becky, I was like, 3's a lot of kids, isn't it? And he's like, He's like, you really wanted 3 kids? I'm like, I know, but like it's so good, but like, fuck, it's a lot.
It's a lot. And like I haven't even, I've got a newborn, and look, they're beautiful and sleepy and quiet most of the time. Like I have not even like.
I know, but it's still a lot at that stage. It just every stage is different. Like it's.
Aiden was saying the other day that having 3 kids is like going to the party but then coming home with the party as well. Like I was like, oh my God, it's so true. And like you were saying,
I like that.
Yeah, because you like look around in the back of the car and like one of them's like, woo, one of them's crying and one of them's doing something else, and you two are like trying to this, and there's music playing, and you're like, oh my God, I thought we just left the party, but like we're bringing the whole party home with us. And then you get home and it's like messy, and one of them's running and one of them's screaming and one of them's dancing, and like, it's a bit like sometimes I think like, back to my fun, carefree like party days too. And I've been like giggling to myself lately, like sometimes around the house I'm like I just pretend or picture that I'm like at a house party now, and like I walk into the bathroom and 2 of them are in the toilet together like doing something weird, and then I walk into another room and one of them's like shat themselves in the corner of the room, and then there's like music blaring in another room that you forgot about, and like all this, and I'm like, oh, let's just like go with like, this is a really wild house party.
Well, look, I was in the kitchen the other day and turned around, could see Lulu in the bath, and which is right next to the kitchen, so I know I wasn't leaving her unattended in the bath, but she was in the bath, and Otis had walked in there, and then Lulu's screaming, and I turn around and he's got the toilet brush and he's literally got it in his mouth. I was just like, okay.
Gross.
Oh my God. And then he picked up Lulu's undies, put them on his head, and threw them in the bath. I'm like, oh, cool, okay.
This is like, I've been to a more wild party.
Yeah, but like, get the fucking toilet brush out of your mouth.
Oh the God. Toilet, the playing in the toilet is too much. Like Ren does that at his age too. He goes in there and he's like pulled all the toilet paper off. He's like touching the seat, got the toilet brush. I'm like, get the fuck out of the toilet. Disgusting.
Well, we have digressed slightly with that toilet story, but
the toilet stories, yeah.
Wow.
I feel like we will have to split this into 2.
Yeah, your birth.
It could be a 2-part story. But like the postpartum, the early weeks are just as like they're a bigger part of the birth, like the birth is an incredible experience, and it's nerve-wracking and it's intense and it's big. Like it's a big moment no matter how you go through it as well. Like so much respect for women that have cesareans as well. Like such a huge operation, such a daunting experience, and just everyone, the way every woman has to do it, it's big. And I get that there's a lot of lead up to that, but it's done in a day.
I know, too much emphasis on the birth, not enough on postpartum.
Emphasis on the birth, yeah. And then once you take the baby home, that's forever. And there's also a lot to deal with your physical recovery. Like, we've talked about all this stuff before, but like the bleeding, and you know what I haven't got this time, which has been amazing. I'll probably jinx myself, but I haven't got the night sweats.
Oh my God.
I know. I've had a couple of nights. But nothing compared to what it's been like with my
don't jinx yourself, because the night sweats
Can it come on later? Could it come on at this stage?
I always had them in those like first like 6 weeks.
Yeah, I'm just like,
so no, maybe you've
somehow skipped
missed it. Oh,
yes. My bleeding had finished up a lot more quickly this time. I think only about 3 weeks, and pretty mild for the last week as well. So kind of like 3 weeks. The post-birth contractions were intense, super painful. Be aware of that if you're going into your second or third.
I feel like they get worse every time.
Birth, yeah, they say that. But apart from that, like my physical recovery and my birth recovery and my early postpartum weeks in general, like the birth, have been the best yet.
So good.
Yeah. So I'm sitting here, 4 weeks in, feeling pretty good and very grateful that that's my experience.
Yeah.
And you know what the other freaking bonus is? Being winter, none of us have been sick since the baby was born.
Touch wood. Let's touch wood on that one.
Touch wood. I know. Honey actually blew her nose this morning and I was like, oh, it's here. It's coming.
It's come.
But like, how freaking lucky is that? But I feel like we did cop it
Yeah.
beforehand because we had, some pretty nasty
Bugs.
coughs and colds and things like in my last few weeks of pregnancy.
And you're feeding and everything, that's all going well.
Yeah. Yep. Even like, the sore blistered nipples. I only had that for a few days and then that all really settled down. Didn't get that really intense experience of when the milk came in this time. It was a little bit more of a non-event. So it's just like incredible to experience how my body's settled into the things that it's done before.
It's amazing.
As well.
The body is just, we underestimate our bodies. Like we really should be treating our bodies like temples.
Oh my God.
I know, it's easy to say, but far out, like what our bodies do and go through.
Yeah. I think in a way, like women deal with a lot, life with periods and childbirth and then menopause and our hormones and everything. Like we deal with a lot. It's difficult. It's a difficult, like, gender to be. But we're also so fucking lucky. Like men never get to experience any of this with their bodies, like
they can't. It's like impossible. So
I feel like in a way, even though we have to like kind of cop it all in a way, like we also get this incredible experience. So girls all the way.
I want another baby, but won't be doing that.
Even Aiden has said that. He's like, but it's amazing that you get to experience that.
Yeah.
And at the time he said it, I was like, oh, shut up. You do it. I don't want to do it. Like it was probably
easy for you to say.
Easy for you to say, yeah.
I know, but whenever I'm like being like, and I'm really conscious of not doing this around the kids, particularly like with the ages my girls are at. But, it's so hard not to be critical of your own, body or things we don't love about ourselves. And my body, I think I've said to you, has definitely changed a lot since having the third. And anytime saying anything, like Mackie does remind me, he's like, you have birthed 3 children. Your body is amazing. Think about what you've done. Like, don't be so
don't
hard
worry
on
about your
it.
extra role.
Oh.
But I feel the same. Like, and that's how we feel, in today's society as women. Just we want to look a certain way because of certain pressures. And that's just the way society is, but it makes it very difficult just to, on a daily basis, respect ourselves and our bodies, doesn't it? Like if it has to take an experience like childbirth, which is like the most extreme experience, for us to respect our bodies, like what hope have we got?
I know.
Like we should just respect ourselves for being able to walk and talk and breathe. Like that's all amazing
things we take
enough.
for granted.
But yeah.
I feel like we could make a whole nother episode out of that. Body image.
Yeah,
body
totally.
dysmorphia.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Like I said at the beginning, I've got a lot to say. I've got a lot of, I've had a lot of thoughts. And after having another baby, you just so many feelings and so many experiences. And, I'm very glad to be on the other side of birth and be able to sit here and share it with you and the lovely people that tune in to listen to us. So,
well done.
Thank you.
You did it.
Thank you.
And you've birthed the most perfect little mini baby girl. Baby girl. Of course, she's a mini right now, but beautiful girl.
You've done well, my sweet.
Proud of
feeding
you.
and sleeping.
I knew you were going to kill it.
Oh, thanks, darling. Thank you. Actually, I should thank you because when we had that beautiful massage day and lunch together when I was pregnant, I was saying to you how I was asking, feeling like I needed more support from Aiden and that he just wasn't giving me what I needed. Although in hindsight of having this experience before with pregnancies and births and having the experience with my partner, I also had the ability to know that he isn't necessarily the person to support me through certain things because he has an experience. So lower my expectations with what I need from him and not put blame on him. And I think I was explaining a little bit about that to you. And I was just saying, I feel so nervous about the birth and he's just not giving me what I need. And like, you know, you said such limited words, but they were just such important, supportive words of encouragement for the birth. And I was like, it's you, you know, it's friends, it's women, it's people who have experienced it before that you need to tap into for that sort of support.
Yeah.
Because, you know, if you're in a heterosexual relationship and you're expecting certain things from your partner, if they haven't experienced, you just can't expect certain things from them. So thank you for those, you know, words of wisdom and strength and guidance that I needed in that moment.
I'm glad it gave you a little spring in your step that day.
Yeah. Well, that's what friends are for, you know.
But I meant it. I
I'm
knew
grateful.
I knew you were going to kill it.
Thank you.
You could do it.
I just needed to be reminded.
Well,
anyway,
we could talk forever.
Yeah.
But
we could, but I hope that this has been, you know, somewhat entertaining or insightful.
I want to know more about where you had sex in your mum's house and what position it was. So we'll wait till we get off. We stop quickly.
We're taking
stop
that
on the
offline.
record.
We're taking that offline. All right. That's
Love
enough
you.
from me.
Bye.
Bye.